everybody. My name is Caitlin Seagraves. I work at Central Library, and today for our Tech Talk, we have Luke Crouch. He is a privacy engineer. He has a better title than that I always forget the full name of, with Mozilla, where he works on a lot of different cool projects. He is also a volunteer with Techlahoma and often does free seminars at the library, which we super appreciate. Today, he's going to be talking about VPNs, kind of what a VPN is, how to use it. I'm looking forward to this because I use a VPN for work, but I don't really understand all that well how it works. So I will go ahead and pass it off over to Luke.
Hey, thanks. So apologies in advance. I didn't get to refine these slides last night as much as I wanted to. But we're definitely going to cover a lot of stuff, and if there are things that are unclear, I guess, Caitlin, you can stop me with, did you have some kind of stopping me power for questions if things are really bad?
I'll do that, and if anybody has questions, just feel free to drop them down in the chat below.
Cool, okay. So I'll let you stop me if it's going off the rails, and then afterwards, I'll try to leave plenty of time for questions also. All right. So yeah, like Caitlin said, I'm a privacy and security engineer for Mozilla. We make the Firefox web browser and a bunch of other products. Most everyone has only ever heard of the Firefox browser, but we do make things like password managers and other sort of browser tools that you can use for privacy and security online. I'm also a board member of Techlahoma Foundation, which does a lot of sort of technology events and workshops and conferences and meetups and all kinds of things in the state of Oklahoma. So the disclaimer here is I work for a company that makes a VPN. So we do have Mozilla VPN, which you can go check out at vpn.mozilla.org. We partner with a VPN network provider called Molvad, and I'll give you more details on this later, but just so everyone knows that the stuff I'm telling you, like I have some stake in this area. So what is a VPN? VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, which I think a great place if you want to go on your own to learn about VPN specifically, like outside of this and at your own pace and read, is called Restore Privacy, or there's restoreprivacy.com/VPN. So I have gone around the internet looking for lots and lots of resources to help explain privacy and security. This is one of the better ones that I've found more recently. Restoreprivacy.com does a really good job of sort of breaking things down in very learnable ways. So that'd be a great one. If you promise you'll go to that, you can check out of this talk right now, and I won't be upset or offended in any way. So if you want to get time of your life back and just promise me that you'll go check this out later, that would be just as good. One of the main questions I think people have about VPNs is how to pick a VPN, which is like easy, just search for best VPN, except that when you do that, you get lots of garbage that's hard to understand, like which of these VPNs is actually good. So the dreaded question that I ask people who ask me about which VPN should they get is the same question you get from tech support all the time, which is, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to protect is one of the questions that I always ask people who are interested in, like, how do I do this thing that has to do with privacy and security? And what do you want to protect? It's usually like, what are you worried about? And so from Mozilla research, a lot of the stuff that we know is we've asked many people, thousands of people, like many numbers of times every month or every year, sort of like, what are the things that are out there that are scaring you right now? So is it, software, like malicious software like viruses or spyware, or is it someone getting your password and taking over your online accounts, like losing your device? What are the things that you're actually worried about? And the top 5 answers that we get pretty regularly are malicious software, like spyware, viruses, ransomware, someone getting your password, taking over your accounts, scams that trick you into giving up personal data, like you get all the scam text messages or whatever, your personal data being stolen when it's sent between your computer and the internet, or someone hacking a service that you use and then stealing your personal data from that service. And so bringing all that back to VPNs is VPNs are designed for this one, the personal data being stolen when it's sent between your computer and the internet. So this is what a VPN is designed to protect. So if you're worried about this, then this is what a VPN will help you with. So back to our restoreprivacy.com/VPN guide. If we dig into that, like protecting your data between your computer and the internet, if we dig into that a bit, I'm going to use this guide, which I've used on a lot of talks about kind of internet security and dark web type stuff, which is from EFF, stands for Electronic Frontier Foundation. And they talk a lot about how, in this case, they talk about Tor, but a lot of the stuff about Tor also applies to VPNs. So we're going to dig into this diagram. This lovely diagram shows you as the happy internet user in the top left using your laptop on a Wi-Fi connection, and you are trying to go to the site.com, which is in the bottom right of this diagram. And this diagram is showing you, this visualization is showing you specifically all of the people, all of the entities that are between you and the site that you're trying to go to. So there's a lot of stuff here, which I think we'll take it one piece at a time. So on the same Wi-Fi network as you could be a hacker or just somebody who is, up to no good. And so there is one person that might be able to see things that go just between your computer and your Wi-Fi router, right? And that could include, in this case, if you're going to a certain site, maybe you're entering in username and password or some other data, and the location is typically like your IP address, which says where you are. Once your Wi-Fi router connects to your internet service provider, so like where I'm at right now, it's Cox. So my data goes from my computer to my Wi-Fi router, and my Wi-Fi router sends it to Cox. And at Cox, there are people like sysadmins who can access the data that goes through the Cox network. That's good, they need to do that, but you just need to be aware that that's happening. And Cox themselves are subject to legal and law enforcement requirements where they may have to surrender data at some point. Let me back up here. So we've taken care of the top half of this diagram. And then our data needs to go from our internet service provider down to the internet service provider of the website that we're trying to visit. So I have Cox as my internet service provider, but if I'm going to Amazon.com, Amazon.com has an internet service provider that operates the internet connection that goes into Amazon.com's servers. So between those two internet service providers, these are called, it's AS nodes, I forget what the AS stands for, but this is where we have heard stories about or seen, or we know that like government entities can actually compel, can get into the links between two internet service providers, right? So they can either compel one side or the other to give them access, or they can find their way into access. Let's say your Cox needs to talk to an internet service provider in Britain or something because the site you're trying to go to is hosted there. Well, there's another node in between two countries, and a government can sit there and look at traffic that's there. This is how countries like China enforce things like what they call the Great Firewall of China, which is any traffic that anyone in China that's trying to access websites that are hosted in the US, Chinese government has a entity or an agency that blocks certain websites, right? Every country typically has this ability. Some of them use it a lot more than others. And then finally, your data will go from your internet service provider, maybe a government agency has access, maybe not, to your websites. The site you're trying to visit also has an internet service provider, right? And so that internet service provider can see everything, and the site you're visiting obviously can see everything. So that is a lot of potential places where your data could be leaked or accessed in ways that you may not want to. So the very first protection that is getting almost default everywhere now, which is fantastic because even just 5 years ago it wasn't the case, is HTTPS. So this is the padlock. It's usually represented with a padlock in your browser. And what it does is it protects that user and password and data in the middle from these eavesdroppers that might be looking at it. So back to our hacker, if you're at a website with a padlock, then they cannot see the user password or the data. They can only see like the website that you're visiting. That's it. Same with your internet service provider. They don't get to look at your username, your password, and that data. All they get to see is the site that you're visiting and where you're coming from. Same with the entities in between. And then the site that you're visiting, their internet service provider doesn't get to see your username or your password or your data. But then obviously the site that you're communicating with, they get to, because you're trying to sign into them and they need you to give the username and password so they can make sure that's the one that they have for you. So if you're only worried about a hacker stealing your password over Wi-Fi, a padlock, the HTTPS padlock thing is probably enough, right? So a hacker breaking HTTPS is possible, but it's much harder than just sniffing it out of the air when it's unencrypted. And like I said, the really nice thing is that HTTPS is, I think now 80 to 90% or more of internet traffic is protected with HTTPS. So this is great. But if you're worried about other things, or if you are worried about that hacker on your Wi-Fi network with you actually trying to break HTTPS, or if you're worried about someone on your Wi-Fi network seeing which websites you visit, or if your internet service provider is seeing which websites you visit, or your government, or anything like that, then you want something like a VPN. So what does the VPN actually do in that whole diagram that we just talked about? Well, what it does is, here's our data where it was flowing. What the VPN does is it basically creates a secure connection straight from your laptop to a VPN provider. So it essentially skips the hacker and your internet service provider with your data. So the only thing that a hacker would see is that your computer is running a VPN, nothing else. And your internet service provider, the only thing that they would see is that your computer is running a VPN and nothing else, right? They just know that you have a computer and you're running a VPN. That's all they know. So a VPN protects all of that data, so the site and your location, from local hackers and your internet service provider. But once your data leaves the VPN, the only thing that it's covering from these other entities is really like that location piece. So if I'm running a web server and your browser tries to connect to me, if you're using a VPN, I can't tell where you are anymore. I just know that you're using a VPN. But if you're sending your username and password and all that stuff, then I can still do that. So the VPN is only hiding your location. And then again, I'm running the website, that's all I can still see your username, your password, and data. I just can't see where you're coming from. So what you really like the most is VPN and your web browser is using HTTPS, right? So your computer is connected on a VPN and your browser is connecting to the site with HTTPS, because in that case, then the only thing that these intermediaries could see is potentially like what site is being visited, but they don't know who you are, they don't know what data you're sending or anything like that. They just know that a website is being visited by someone. That's it. And then same on the site's internet service provider would only know that. And then again, because you're talking to this website, you are actually submitting like your data to this website. So almost all VPNs will solve this local hacker and internet service provider problem, or else you wouldn't really call them a VPN, right? Like they shouldn't be calling themselves a VPN if they're not doing that. What you're doing when you use a VPN is you're basically just using a different internet service provider. So a lot of us are stuck with the internet service provider that we're sort of stuck with at our house or at our work, we have to use Cox or we have to use AT&T. There's like two choices, right? There's hundreds of VPN providers. So you're basically getting to sort of like choose a new person that you're going to trust with the data that's sent from your computer to the internet. So you can think of it like this. There's VPNs, right? And the VPN providers themselves also have sysadmins. They're subject to lawyers, law enforcement, that kind of stuff. But some VPNs are as bad or worse than your internet service provider. So if we get back to how to pick one of these VPNs, how do we know these bad ones? You probably don't want a free one. Because what happens is a lot of free VPNs, what they do is they're solving the local Wi-Fi hacker problem, but then they also have a bunch of your data and they usually turn around and sell that data. And that's how they're making their money when they're a free VPN. Almost, not in every case, but more than likely, if a VPN provider is offering their services for free, this is what they're doing. They're taking your data, some of it, they may not, they're not going to take your username and password and all that kind of stuff, but they're going to take a lot of data about you and they're going to turn around and sell that to trackers and advertisers and whoever else wants to buy it, right? So how do you pick which VPN to pay for? Well, if they all protect from the local hackers and your internet service provider, what else are you trying to do? So here's where security people like me get really annoying, and we can't just give you the magic bullet that solves all the security problems. We have to actually ask you, what is it that you're worried about? What is it you're trying to do? So what else are you trying to do? Some common things that people are trying to do with VPNs is sort of bypass geographic restrictions on websites or streaming services. So like, oh man, in Netflix in England, you can watch this like show. You can watch like all the old Doctor Who's, but that's not in America. What the heck? Like I want to get in on that. Okay, well, grab a VPN and make yourself look like you're in England, right? And then you get that. Some people are just trying to hide their true location. I like a VPN for that. Every time you visit a website, they might get a little ping that says, hey, this IP address, we don't know who this is, but a person from, and it can be down like to the level of potentially your home address, right? Some computer at this home address visited a website, this website. You don't want that out there. That's a reason to use a VPN. Some people use it to bypass internet censorship. So I mentioned that like in China, they block certain websites and certain content. But with a VPN, you can make it a lot harder for your internet access to be blocked. Avoid online tracking. A lot of online trackers use that location or that IP address that you have from your machine, from your computer, and they use that to see like, oh, this computer visited this website and then this other website, and then 20 minutes later they visited this other website, and so they're tracking you with that. And then just downloading media. So this is, all of the online piracy that people want to do, and they think that using VPNs will help them do that. But not everyone wants to know about all of these things. So I'm going to talk about 3 main features of VPNs and how they apply to some of the things that people might want to be doing. So the 3 main features you should think about if you're going to pick a VPN is how fast is the VPN, because if it's not fast, you're not going to use it. Where is the VPN based and where does it have servers? And does the VPN log your data? So if we look at how fast is the VPN, it's great at privacy, but if it's terribly slow, then you're never going to turn your VPN on, which means that you're not going to use it. And why are you paying for it? Don't turn it on. So you want a fast VPN. RestorePrivacy.com has a page about VPNs where they have measured the fastest, and they do it on a regular basis. So that's a great place to always check for the latest. I also use a site called fast.com, which is run by Netflix, and they do a good job of letting you sort of like measure your default speed without a VPN and then turn on a VPN and run it again and see how much it changes. So if you click show more info, you can see there's 2 major components of speed of something being fast. The ones that are mentioned here at fast.com, one is your latency, and then one is your download speed. So we're going to talk about that here in a second. But the things that affect your speed is your physical connection. So if you remember the days of Wi-Fi where, like cavemen, we had to put cords into machines and then plug them into walls and crap like that. Those Ethernet connections are much, much faster than Wi-Fi. They're also more secure because, like we saw with the hacker on the Wi-Fi, your stuff's not just flying out over the air, it's only going through a cord, so someone would have to compromise like more physical medium than just the air. It also depends on the distance between your computer and like the website that you're trying to get to, and then the bandwidth of the network between your computers. So if you think about how long is the pipe, for lack of a better word, how long is the tube, the series of tubes, like how long is that tube between your computer and the server that you're trying to reach, and then how thick around is that tube, and then networking protocols used. Kind of technical there, but there's two kinds of speeds, like I mentioned. One is ping or latency, and one is bandwidth. Ping or latency, lower is better, and this is important for like fast web browsing or gaming and things like that. So if you do more web browsing, emailing, that kind of stuff, then you're going to want really low latency, and especially if you do any kind of online gaming, you want really low latency. The other kind of speed is bandwidth, and this number you want to be high, and this is like important for streaming. So think about a movie is a really big chunk of data that needs to get down to you in a constant succession. So you want a really big bandwidth. You need a big wide pipe to be able to bring a movie down. So if you do a lot of streaming and downloading, then you want bandwidth. And then the ping and the latency has a lot to do with the second main feature of VPNs, which is where is the VPN based and where does it have servers? If there's a server close to you, you'll get much better speeds. And most VPNs show you where they have servers. So if you're going to go look for a VPN and you want to look for one that has, especially one in your country, but even one that's like the one that I use, which is Mozilla VPN, obviously, but like I connect to the VPN servers that are in Dallas or Chicago or something that's like close to us, rather than connecting to one that's in Europe, because that's just going to slow things down. If you care about security but not privacy, you might be able to stop paying attention now, where if you're here just for the security part, you're like, I just want to protect myself from the Wi-Fi hackers, and maybe from my internet service provider might lose my data or leak my data. I don't want those free VPN providers to be selling my data, like I just want a secure one. Then you can probably go shop or go to restoreprivacy.com/VPN and look for the ones that have, fast servers near you, and you can just be done and call it a day. So again, if anyone else wants to exit, you can exit now. But if you might want to see where the VPN company is based, if you are concerned about sort of privacy, and especially, I guess we'll just get into it, like privacy from the law. So there is another site called privacytools.io, and this site is much more of like the tinfoil hat level of recommendations, where restoreprivacy.com is just sort of like, basic human understandable. The community behind this site really turns it up to 11. And so they have a page about VPN providers, and they talk about what is known as the 14 Eyes, which are countries that have agreed to some level of sharing data with each other in the course of law enforcement investigations, regulation enforcement, this kind of thing. So the Five Eyes are Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and USA. And they basically have said with each other, like, we will share everything. Like pretty much anything that our agencies, any data that our agencies have, you can have. The Nine Eyes are the ones that are sort of like, you can have some, not all. And then the 14 Eyes are like even less, right? But the reason this might be important, so that maybe sharing data with each other's governments. If you're worried about hiding your traffic from your government, you may want a VPN provider who's not based in one of those countries, right? Because if you pick a VPN provider and they're based in the United States, then anyone or law enforcement in the United States can go to that VPN provider and demand, now there's ways they have to demand it. Like there's still some legal protections around it, but they can essentially demand your data, right? And if you live in the US and your provider is in the US, then anyone in the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand could also demand data about you, right? So if you go to privacy tools and look at their recommended providers, they only recommend VPNs that are outside of these 14 countries, that are based in a country that's not one of these 14. And so like their top one is Mozilla VPN, which is based in Sweden, which is not one of the countries. Wait, they might be they're one of the 14, but they're not one of the 5. So that is where the VPN is based. Is if it has servers that are close to you, then that's going to help your speed. If the company itself is based in a certain country, that's going to help your privacy from, for example, government requests. And then the last one would be, does the VPN keep logs of its data? So again, restoreprivacy.com has a really good article about this. And there are 3 main types of VPNs claiming to log or not log. So usage logs means the VPN is logging essentially everything. And it's essentially, most free VPN apps do this, and they're basically spyware. So they can see everything, they collect everything, they log everything, and then they turn around later and figure out, well, we got a ton of data about what people are doing on our VPN network. How can we make money? Like, they just keep it all, right? The next one would be connection logs. And so this is used to like optimize or troubleshoot the network itself. So some VPNs will do this. That means they record who is connecting to their network, and they keep that. So they know, Luke lives at this address, connected from Cox Internet Service Provider to our VPN network, and then got off of our network 2 hours later. And they know that, and they keep that log forever, right? So they know when I got online, when I got offline, and that kind of thing. They don't log what I did, but they definitely have logs of my connection. Some VPNs will do that while claiming to be a no logs provider, where they don't log anything. But a no logs, don't log anything, basically they will probably look at these connection logs, or the computers have to log something, but they usually like throw that data out as soon as you're off the VPN. Then they just throw all of that data about when you connected, where you connected from, it's gone, right? So that's the no logs provider. Okay, so 3 main features. The main security feature, how fast is the VPN? Where does it have servers? Privacy features would be, where is the VPN based, and where does it have servers, and does the VPN keep logs of its data? So if you're mostly interested in VPN for security, probably the main things you're interested in are how fast is it and where does it have servers, and you want them close to you so they can be fast. If you're interested on the privacy side for VPNs, then you want to look at where is the company based, where does it have servers, and does the VPN log things? Okay, so the shameless promo for Mozilla VPN, which I held off for 30 minutes. But like I said, if you go to privacytools.io, and their community behind this, like I said, is definitely amped up on privacy. And their #1 recommended VPN provider is called Mullvad. And so they have the highest standards I've seen for recommendations anywhere on the net, and they recommend Mullvad. And we at Mozilla VPN, we actually use Mullvad as our VPN provider. So we are using what the privacy zealots and advocates online suggest to use already. We also use a new VPN protocol called WireGuard, which is really good for speed. So this was one of the holdouts that I had about VPNs, is every time I tried one, it seemed like things would slow down and not very well. And like I'm on the Mozilla VPN right now, giving a webcast and streaming, and I've got music that has been streaming and download files, and it's really, really fast. And we're actually cheaper than if you go to Mullvad itself. And the reason we do this is like, I don't know what the classic salesperson says, like, you know, we make it up on bulk, or that's where we make our money. But essentially, like, Firefox and Mozilla has a very large built-in audience and customer base in Firefox. Like, we have hundreds of millions of people. And so Molvad was very happy to give us like a discounted rate for people who use it through Mozilla, knowing that we could probably get millions of people to sign up for it who wouldn't otherwise sign up for it. So if you use Mozilla VPN, it's only $5 a month. If you go to Molvad, it's $5.50 a month. So not a whole lot, but oh yeah, that's how, because we help them reach so many Firefox users. And then speaking of Firefox, if you already have a Firefox account, which of course you all do, signing up is super easy. You just go to vpn.mozilla.org and click on the sign up, and you just put your credit card in there. And we use, of course, secure transactions. More of Firefox live demo. I'm afraid I don't have this queued up, so I will stop here for questions instead. And I'll leave this slide up to remind anyone of all of the junk that I just said.
Now my internet connection is unstable. I am on a VPN. I do have a question for you. I have noticed at Central Library, so we use an open public network that people can connect to. It's not password protected at all. You just have to confirm our terms of agreements to use our devices at the library. I have noticed that when people try to connect to a VPN on our network, it doesn't always work. Do VPNs work with open networks?
Yeah, so it's network operators can basically do things to try to block VPN usage on their networks. And typically what they do is a VPN, when my VPN client is trying to contact a server, it has a very specific looking connection request that tries to go out the first time it tries to request. It has to go, that request has to go to the Wi-Fi router first. And so this part of my connection, before I've made the VPN connection, this part is easy for the Wi-Fi router to intercept and go, oh, that's trying to connect to a VPN. You're not allowed to use VPNs on our network. So it just blocks that from happening. There are what they call obfuscation protocols that VPNs can use to get around this. And they work for the most part, but they also slow things down quite a bit. So most of the time, the VPN clients don't necessarily implement this all the time, because typically when you're trying to do this, most of the privacy advocates would say at that point, just start using Tor, which is sort of like a most extreme privacy connection that you can get. But there are VPN clients. I think Molvad supports VPN configuration where you can go in and you can say, hey, I'm on a network that's probably going to block VPN connections. Try to connect with the stealthy way.
So say somebody does purchase a VPN and say they were using the Mozilla one. I noticed that you can use it on 5 different devices. You can also use it on your desktop. How do you connect to it? And is it an app? Is it a network that you connect to?
Yeah, so it's an app. Most VPNs are an app that you download. There will be a desktop app, and there will be a mobile application for mobile devices. And yeah, you download the app, and then you sign into the app with your username and password for Mozilla, it's your Firefox account. If you do Molvad, you have to register or whatever. But you sign into that, and then the app gives you a little interface. Let me see if I can share my interface, actually. Look, I can do a demo. Okay, it's this one. So yeah, this is my Mozilla VPN app running in the background. It's been connected for 51 hours. Wow, nice. And then I can actually go in and select like my location So right now I'm connected through Dallas, but I could pick some other countries. This is all of the places where Molvad has servers. I'm not going to change any of this because it'll kick me off the call. But yeah, so then my devices, I have a laptop and I have a mobile. Yeah, and then just signed in. And, this shows me IP address and sort of just the network activity that's going on over the VPN. But yeah, once you do this, what most VPN apps do now is most operating systems have sort of VPN awareness built in. And so they actually activate the operating system's VPN feature. And they tell the operating system which VPN server to connect to and how and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's an app.
When you're using it on your mobile device, does it say you're not connected to any network and you have it turned on your mobile device? At that point, is it just covering your tracks from you to your cell phone service provider?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, no, that's exactly the right question, and that's exactly the right way to think about it. So like where I'm at right now, Cox is my internet service provider, but on my cell phone, if it's not on Wi-Fi, if it's on the cellular network, then my internet service provider is AT&T or Verizon or whoever. And so if I have a VPN on, it's essentially hiding what I'm doing on my mobile device from AT&T, Verizon, or whoever.
Are there any major internet service providers in the Tulsa area that try to reject VPN connections that you are aware of?
I do not know of any. I would doubt it because I think that it's become common enough these days, and the reality is most likely that even though in like my slides and a lot of privacy advocates will say like your internet service provider can see the websites that you're visiting, the reality is most of them don't care. There is some concern that they will act like one of those bad VPN providers where they go and aggregate a bunch of their customer data and then go sell it. That is actually like, no one has really like figured out if internet service providers are doing that at a large scale or not, right? So yeah, I have never heard of anyone in Tulsa where their internet service provider like wouldn't let them use a VPN.
Yeah, and I imagine that would be difficult, especially since so many people that are working from home right now are using VPNs to connect to for work stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, does anybody else have any other questions before we call it a day? I'm going to get these slides from Luke to send out to everybody and include a couple of these links that he's mentioned. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email me and I will try to suss out answers for you. But Luke, I appreciate you joining us today and sharing your knowledge. As always, I learned a lot.
For sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Always fun. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Have a good one.